week of football, huh? What a week of football. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to technically now our week 4 waiver wire-ish post week 3 live stream. Again, over the course of the last couple of days, we've seen some very interesting, turn of events. We've obviously seen some great performances. Obviously, those last 2 games, the Buffalo Bills put up their, a good volume of points. Everybody scored nearly. There were a couple instances in which I was hoping for perhaps a Josh Allen rushing touchdown, but either way, we'll take 4 touchdowns at the end of the first half. Some ridiculous numbers across the board there. And then what a surprising shock there by the Washington Commanders offense not having a single, hiccup throughout this entire game. When we were watching the broadcast, they literally, the announcer had literally just said that they hadn't had a penalty until the fourth quarter. Like, that's as perfect of a game as you can play. Just looking at Jaden Daniels' overall stats, what was he? I think he had like a 92% passing completion percentage. He was quite literally 21 of 23 passing, 91.3%. You couldn't get better. All while, of course, Jamar Chase is tearing apart your secondary as he is intended to, and still you're able to hold on and survive despite the fact that your defense gives up 33 effing points. Quite a week. Obviously, there were players that were no-shows. There were players that were far better than they have been thus far this season. Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper have found themselves in 2024. We can welcome them, firm handshakes, welcome. Don't get comfortable. We're going to need you to perform in the coming weeks. And then there are players like Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, who once again disappear and absolutely fry our teams. And quite frankly, I'm going to be honest. The tight end position as a whole is a complete effing disaster. Across the board, we just don't have enough consistent producers to the extent to where we can find ourselves trusting the position as a whole. But man, what an interesting week. But either way, that's the whole point. That's why we're here. We have seen what is to have happened in week 3, and we're going to try to adapt from it and figure it out. HN not having 4 catches is disgusting. Maddox, I don't even want to start. I don't want to rant. Here's the worst part about that HN deal is, okay, but prior to the quarterback change, he was on pace. 1 reception per quarter. We were going to get to 4 easily. Then Skylar Thompson gets hurt. Then they bring in Tim Boyle. And then at the very end of the game, one of the final drives, he gets the reception. Beautiful. And then one of my favorite players, Jonnu Smith, illegal procedure, penalty, and it's all gone. It all goes downhill. It all goes downhill fast, real fast. Either way, let's get into answering some questions. A very interesting week 3, to say the least. I see Cheese Curds in the live chat said, Raiders sold me this week. I'm sad. Listen, the Raiders sold everyone. It isn't just you. Zamir White is droppable at this point. It is tough to say, but at this point, I cannot stand the running game of the Raiders. We just have to hope that Devontae Adams is going to have himself on and off weeks, back and forth, and that we're more often on than off, because really that Raiders team is they got torched by Andy Dalton. They didn't get torched. They got embarrassed at home. What a week. Okay. Getting into answering questions again. For those of you who are joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Earlier today, we did end up posting week 4 waiver wire targets. If you guys are interested, check out the video that we posted in regards to players that potentially had played incredibly well tonight. That could be potential emerging options. Of course, Zach Ertz, 5 receptions, 38 yards. We'll take it. Mike Gesicki, 4 receptions on 5 targets, 47 yards. Obviously not the greatest overall tight end performances, but we'll take it in comparison to the fact that they are outproducing players like Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta in a lot of these instances. And for many of us who are going to be needing a tight end in the absence of Trey McBride going into week 4, probably some options that you could end up, potentially utilizing within the upcoming week here. And then, of course, maybe even grabbing a tight end if you do have an upcoming bye week, perhaps week 5. We have week 5 or week 6. There are 4 teams on each of those weeks that have a bye week. So maybe you want to go ahead and preemptively prepare for that. But outside of that, really nothing major in terms of potential waiver wire studs that may come to pass, unless an injury is going to really imply that, and it's an injury that we are not 100% certain of as of right now and may become public tomorrow. We'll have to keep it, an eye on that. Anyway, let's get into answering questions, shall we? JP Giles sends in a question, says, should I accept a trade Aaron Rodgers for Sam Darnold, standard PPR? Between the two of them, look, if Aaron Rodgers continues to improve with the team that surrounds him, and he's going to continue to be in a situation in which hopefully they will be scoring a lot of points, or at least being in, a 24 plus point per team kind of situation, then I think they'll technically have similar value. But as of right now, obviously Sam Darnold is playing out of his mind, and just wait till Sam Darnold gets all of his pieces back, right? Addison's not healthy. Hawkinson's not healthy. Once those pieces return, I think he has a little bit of an advantage in that scenario. But if we're just talking about right now, talking about pure experience and the potential of who can outproduce one another, I don't mind the idea of relying upon Rodgers. Again, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, so I'd put my money, on Rodgers in that scenario. JP, thank you. Myra Williams sends in a super chat, says, traded ETN and Hill for Bijan Robinson and Devontae Smith. Thoughts? Okay, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. I have no complaints at all. I think Hill for Bijan Robinson is relatively equal. Obviously, the absence of a quarterback for the Miami Dolphins definitely is a discount. We're going to get discounted production off of Hill, so obviously nothing is going to come of that for a while. Hopefully, Tyler Huntley's ready to start throwing for them. But in this scenario, yeah, Devontae Smith, ETN, in terms of equal value. I think you came out on the right side there getting Bijan and Devontae Smith. I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. Hopefully he'll be able to fight through that and, of course, practice and then play this upcoming weekend. Thank you, Myra. Appreciate it. Great trade. Brian sends in a super chat, says, drop Pierce for Mooney. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Especially in a full PPR format. Again, Pierce is going to have these weeks where he'll have, a touchdown or make a big play. He even had a 40+ yard reception in his most recent game against the Chicago Bears. But ultimately, it's not going to be consistent enough for him to be a fantasy relevant player to where we can start every week. And that's kind of what I've been alluded to over the last couple weeks here, based on his production. But quite frankly, I don't know if any wide receiver for that offense is going to find consistent production. The fact that Anthony Richardson, for the second time this season, has 10 or fewer passing completions in a game, that is very, very, very concerning and alarming. For those of you who have Richardson, it may be time to roster a second quarterback just to be safe. Absolutely need to do so, probably. Jonathan Cushman sends in a question, says, in a 12-team, full PPR league, Hurts, Jonathan Taylor, Dobbins, A.J. Brown, Metcalf, Kincaid, and Worthy. Okay, very well. Javonte, Johnston, and Madison. Any trade suggestions? Look, at this point, Dobbins and Taylor are pretty secure for the remainder of the season. I think the same thing kind of holds within A.J. Brown, Metcalf, Jalen Hurts, Kincaid. Worthy's obviously your most unreliable piece in this scenario, and I think going forward, obviously, is going to continue to be a piece that, quite frankly, outside of Rashee Rice, we can't really rely upon anybody in that offense on a consistent basis. So as it stands, you would probably hope to try to maybe move him or wait for a big week and then potentially move him, because with Quentin Johnston, you could get him into the mix of being your flex, assuming, of course, Justin Herbert is healthy. But Javonte Williams can't be trusted. Madison, I guess, every now and then is going to play great, every other week. If he steals the rushing touchdown on the goal line, which, of course, he has done already thus far this season twice in the 3 games. But yeah, we're definitely going to need a flex. As for trading your other pieces in order to acquire one, I think I'd rather just hit the waiver wire and try to strike gold in that scenario, Jonathan, or at least trying to wait for Worthy or Quentin Johnston to be the guy that you can play in the right week. Thank you. All right, we scroll down here. Let me just go ahead and catch up on some of these super chats. Again, if you guys do send in a super chat, do me a favor and include your scoring format. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of the next question on hand, we had one that came in from KB who says, your opinion on Christian McCaffrey going to Germany? Yeah, that's what I read that earlier today. So he went to Germany to see a Achilles specialist because he has Achilles tendonitis. Okay, not good. Not good at all. Now, I will say the reason why they go to Germany, typically from my experience of knowing what Kobe used to do, okay, because that was always publicly reported, he would go to Germany to get stem cells, or I don't know what it was, some sort of procedure that isn't, I don't know, maybe the legality of it in the U.S. isn't as confirmed, or I don't know what the deal is. There's some sort of procedure that they typically go to Germany for. I know that Kobe used to do that shit all the time. So I'm assuming McCaffrey went there to get a procedure done to try to recover whatever injury is plaguing him, which is, again, his Achilles tendonitis, calf strain, whatever it ended up, being called. So obviously not great, but it is good that he is trying to find other ventures of medicine to recover quicker than we're hoping. Again, the fact that he is making these moves to go get a procedure at this moment, leads me to believe that Jordan Mason is probably going to be starting longer than we potentially anticipate. So again, like I've continued to mention, if you don't have McCaffrey, it's probably a really good idea for you to be trading for Mason. And if you are a Mason manager, you can hold him, but it's probably in your best interest to try to trade him away because of how much essential value he has. And eventually, once McCaffrey returns, you don't want to be left empty-handed in that kind of a scenario. But yeah, obviously not great signs, but it is promising that he is getting some sort of procedure hopefully done to kind of recover him and get him on the right track. Jay sends in a question, says in a 12-team PPR, just traded JMO and Cup, thoughts? Sorry, just traded JMO and got Cup, thoughts? Cup, I know, is confirmed that he's not going to play this upcoming week, so he'll probably return either in I think in week 5 he has a bye week. Am I mistaken? Let me just confirm this. NFL week 5. So as of right now, yes. Okay, so as it currently stands, they do not have a bye week in week 5. So is it week 6 that I'm mistaken? It is week 6. Okay, so considering the Los Angeles Rams have a week 6 bye, I would venture to say that you're not going to have Cooper Kupp back in your lineup until week 7. Because why would you bring him back earlier rather than later? Of course, you just stole a victory against the 49ers. The Rams still have, an opportunity to this week beat the Chicago Bears. Then the following week hit a bye week, and then in week 7, perhaps get Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp back. So in your scenario here, I think it's a great trade. But again, probably going to need to have a supplemental piece to fill in his stead until week 7. Okay, just keep an eye out for that, Jay. And if you're looking for a Rams wide receiver, it would probably end up being Tutu Atwell. Seems like he is the benefactor of the absence of Puka and Kupp thus far that we have seen. Thank you. Old Greg sends in a question, says, in a 12-team PPR, start 8. I'm currently 3-0. Should I trade Malik Neighbors and David Montgomery for Saquon? I don't think you need to. Look, David Montgomery has scored a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. Not only that, he's out-touched Jahmyr Gibbs 59-51 thus far. So really, for all of us who made the early investment of Jahmyr Gibbs at the back end of the first, beginning of the second, we just have red clown noses. Like, I'm getting my clown shoes tomorrow. I've already ordered it on Amazon. That's going to be the Halloween, because at this point, I look like a fucking clown. I ended up drafting Jahmyr Gibbs as high as I did. And then look, don't get me wrong. I love David Montgomery. I've been chanting David Montgomery's names from the rooftops ever since last season. Since the Chicago Bears days. But I thought we would see a far greater potential out of the usage of Jahmyr Gibbs, which obviously we haven't found. David Montgomery's not really going anywhere or taking a backseat in any sort of capacity. So I don't think you need to make this trade. Malik Neighbors looks great within an offense that we didn't think could actually function as a passing offense, but they are. So ultimately, if you really want to, because you're in you're in a 12-team league, I wouldn't give that away. I'd keep that. I'd keep Malik and I'd keep Montgomery. Looking at your depth, it says running backs are McCaffrey, Mason, Braylon, and Brooks. My wide receivers are Amon-Ra, DK, Jaden, and BTJ. Yeah, look, honestly, if I was in your position, I'd just keep it. The freedom to be able to play Mason or McCaffrey with David Montgomery every week, solid. And then you have Amon-Ra, DK, and then Malik Neighbors as your 2 wide receivers and your 1 flex. If you need another flex, then of course Jaden Reed, once in fact we do get the return of Jordan Love, would be that other guy. In a start 8 league where you have either 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, or 2 wide receivers, 2 flex, I'd rather have just a greater depth in this circumstance. So yeah, I'd hold Old Greg. Thank you. Free Hola 33 says, should I trade Kirk/Javonte for Garrett Wilson? I love Kirk. Trading away Christian Kirk and Javonte Williams for Garrett Wilson, I would absolutely do so. Here's the thing. I've mentioned in the past, Christian Kirk's overall value is very much so in line with the presence of Evan Ingram. Once Evan Ingram returns, they're going to continue to fight for receiving utilization and targets within the slot position. So that is going to negatively affect potentially both of them. If you can somehow make an upgrade of the capacity of bringing in Garrett Wilson in exchange, I'd do so. I know Garrett Wilson hasn't played up to the overall standard that we were anticipating based on, of course, the association with Aaron Rodgers, but I think it will get better over time. Obviously, the first 3 weeks of the season, taking on Tennessee, San Francisco, and the New England Patriots, those are not easy potential coverage matchups. And from even Rodgers' mouth, we've heard it. The entire time, it's just coverage over the top. They're just trying to double team Garrett Wilson the whole time, and it's obviously worked. But they're going to continue to try to scheme up ways to get him open and available. So I'd go with Garrett there. Thank you. Ramiz sends in a question. Says, in a 12-team full PPR, traded Diggs for Ayuk. Thoughts? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I think that's great. Listen, Ayuk is still, in my opinion, a buy low candidate. He's going to be overshadowed by the fact that Juwan Jennings scored 41 fucking fantasy points. Unbelievable week. But yeah, Ayuk is still going to be kind of shrouded by that. People are going to still think, oh man, Ayuk is done. Like, I don't know what to do. And then they're going to sell him easy. So if you're able to get Ayuk in exchange for just Diggs, I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no issue with that at all. I think it's a great trade. All right, let's see here. Dan Hart sends in a question. In a half PPR, trade Godwin for Aaron Jones. I have CeeDee Lamb, Marvin Harrison, Rice. Started Montgomery and Foreman this week at running back. Yeah, Foreman's gone pretty much. It's hilarious. Foreman 1 week, 14 rushing attempts. The next week after that, 2. Doesn't play a single snap in any scenario. Very interesting how the Cleveland Browns coaching staff has functioned. But obviously the unpredictability of that is something that we want to avoid going forward here. But in your scenario, considering all of the wide receiver depth you have and the talent that you have, I have no issue making that trade. I would even say to potentially shoot for even higher value than Aaron Jones. But if Aaron Jones is the best running back that you can get in exchange for a Chris Godwin, who has scored a touchdown in each of the last 3 weeks, I'm perfectly fine with that move. Again, it gives you the running back depth that you require, but it still doesn't hurt the wide receiver depth that you have, which, again, you got studs across the board in that scenario. So yeah, no problem with it at all. Aiden0815 says, should I trade Amon-Ra for CeeDee Lamb? Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. That's fine by me. No problem with that at all. The Dallas Cowboys, based on how their defense has looked, they're going to be in negative game scripts quite literally every game for the remainder of the season. I'd even potentially predict to say that this upcoming Thursday's game is going to be a tough one for them against the Giants, which it should never be. When you compare the talent level of both these teams, it shouldn't be a close matchup. And for, obviously selfish purposes, we're hoping it's a close matchup so we can see some value out of Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, Devin Singletary, etc. But either way, I have no issue making that trade at all. All right, let's see here. Mesa Kong sends in a question. Or Mesa Kong says, Manuel and Irving, 12-man full PPR. Manuel and Irving. Okay, got it. Who should I claim? Both or both? I lost this week. I have Achane and Harris. Got it. Harris is going to get a little bit more of an uptick of opportunity. Had 5 receptions, which is great. Again, in the absence of a Jaylen Warren, who again aggravated that injury. We're going to see more Harris going forward here, especially in a matchup this week against Indianapolis, who cannot stop us whole defensively, so it should be fun. But in your scenario here, I would prioritize Bucky Irving. If you can get him, I don't know what you have available to drop. I don't mind picking up both, especially if you are Josh Jacobs' manager. Having Emmanuel Wilson on your bench, not a bad option. But in this scenario, yeah, Bucky Irving needs to be the number one amongst those two, especially considering, of course, he's played far more efficiently than Rachaad White. And additionally, on top of it, we've heard the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come out this morning and say, we're going to see a lot more snap usage out of Irving, which again kind of implements and implicates him to potentially getting more rushing attempts and maybe even taking over that goal line role, which would be awesome in that scenario. Because again, it's a great offense. Tex Raid sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, I'm stuck with Andrews and Likely and don't know what to do. Yeah, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Really, at this point, you just have to pray because the tight end position is in shambles as a whole. Again, just looking at it across the board. Travis Kelce, nothing. Sam Laporta, nothing. Mark Andrews, nothing. Trey McBride now concussed. George Kittle injured. Kincaid finally showed up after 2 weeks of nothingness. Then we have Evan Ingram injured. David Njoku injured. Finally, Jake Ferguson came back to reality after an injury. Outside of that, those were like the top 10 tight ends. Bowers, great thus far, but this last week, obviously the Raiders sold every soul. I have no idea what the heck the Raiders were doing. They didn't show up as an offense, as a defense, as a whole. Coaching staff probably didn't show up either. But either way, as for what you can do, is the panic justified? Yes, absolutely. 3 games is enough for me to understand what exactly is going on. Additionally, you said you have Njoku and Kmet are the next available, the best available. Okay, cool. So in this scenario, again, it's a matter of figuring out whether or not Njoku is going to be healthy going into this upcoming week. You could potentially pick him up because I do think he has a little bit more value rest of the season. Kmet, again, if Kmet continues to be of the similar kind of opportunity, I don't think he's going to have 11 targets per week. But let's say, for example, he's going to continue the rest of the season somewhere between 4 to 6 to maybe 7 targets if we're lucky. Kmet and Njoku could be very easily comparable value players going forward, and to very easily garner a start over Andrews or Likely. Having Andrews and Likely on the same team is never fun because, again, if one scores and the other doesn't, you're pretty much feeling like an idiot. But yeah, if there's an opportunity to pick up what the heck happened? Did my internet go out? Reload page? Nope, internet. Let me see. No, internet's still good. Okay, sorry about that. But yeah, if the opportunity does arise to potentially grab one of those two tight ends, I don't mind it. Like, I would drop Likely at this point and go for either of those two, whichever one you're able to get on your team, in order to just kind of give yourself a little bit of a diversity, and then additionally see if you can strike gold somewhere else. Thank you. All right, let's see here. After a question of that sort, we go on to Nathan Dennison, who says, "Are we trading Jacobs? I watched the game and was horrified." Yeah. So here's the thing. We know that it's a good offense. We know that they're ultimately going to play better. Once they now have Jordan Love under center, it will be a lot different. There will be a lot more potential success within the running game because teams aren't just going to stack the box and force, the rushing attempts to get stuffed on majority of the overall scenarios. Once you go ahead and kind of revitalize the passing game and utilize Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Christian Watson on a consistent basis in comparison to what they've done in the last 2 weeks with Malik Willis out there, it will open up more opportunities. And again, a lot of defenses cannot stack the box against Jordan Love. If they even faked their attempt in doing so, they will get torched. So I think Jacobs is going to get better over time with the return of Jordan Love, which is hopefully this week if he's fully healthy. Of course, I don't want him to return if he's not fully healthy. But in this situation, selling Jacobs, considering he hasn't scored a touchdown, again, he should have scored in week 2, but again, he fumbled out of the back. Selling Jacobs right now, I think, is a little bit premature. I would hold on to him. Thank you. V. Rosado sends in a question. Says, what side hurts A.J. Brown, Godwin, or Marvin Harrison, Mahomes, Amari Cooper? I would rather have Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Godwin as of right now. The quarterback's better, the top receiver's better, and the secondary receiver's better. So I'd rather have the Jalen Hurts side of this conversation. Thank you. God's Gang sends in a question. Says, my team is Murray, Hall, Etienne London, Olave, Neighbors, Higgins, Najee, Njoku, breaking, I think you meant bench, but it probably auto-corrected, Allen, Worthy, Pirine, and grown man Jaden Daniels. What should I do to improve? I mean, at this point, again, when you have Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray on the same team, it's probably in your best interest to trade one of the two. I've been mentioning this to many of the teams that have had this kind of scenario over the last couple of days. You need to move one of the two. So you got to figure out which one you want to keep, move the second one. You don't need to have two quarterbacks. You can go and easily pick up another quarterback off of waivers when the bye week arises, but there's no need for the insurance of having two top tier quarterbacks who are going to be in the top 5, I'd say top 8 rankings, both of them respectively, for the remainder of the season on a weekly basis. So there's no need to have both. As for the rest of your team, Hall's great, London's great, Olave's great, Neighbors is great. Higgins had a lot of opportunities in the red zone, obviously. A couple non-calls in that scenario, but also a little bit of him getting off the dust. I don't think it's rust per se. It's more dust. Once he goes ahead and has a couple more weeks of practice under his belt, we'll be better off. But he was given opportunity, which is very promising. Etienne, I mean, that's the biggest problem with your team right now. You can try to move him, but again, you're not going to be able to sell him for more than a bag of peanuts. Unless somebody else is just like all in on the idea of ETN. So for now, trying to move that quarterback. Maybe you take one of your quarterbacks. Maybe you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to keep Daniels. I'm going to move Murray and ETN and just try to go upgrade for a running back. It's not a bad idea. But outside of that, the quarterback move is the most needing priority at this moment. Flipside Fishing. Long time no see, Flipside. Hope you're doing well. Says, in a 10-team full PPR, with Laporta hurt, I have to pick up a tight end. I need to drop one. Ford, Mostert, or Charbonnet. I would drop Ford. No. We're going to keep Ford. We're going to keep Charbonnet. We'll drop Mostert in this scenario. Henry is my RB1. Yeah, I drop Mostert in this scenario. I would keep Charbonnet because, again, if there's a possibility in which we do have Kenneth Walker out, or maybe he returns and then re-aggravates the injury, Charbonnet, again, has proven 2 weeks in a row that he is of a great value at the running back position. And I like to keep Ford for now because, again, he is kind of the starter in that scenario. So that's who I would drop Mostert. Thank you. Phil sends in a question, says, as an Andrews owner, I'm terrified. Thoughts? Yeah, listen, I don't blame you. Again, the offense is purely, it is funny. The offense is predicated on, first and foremost, the running game. They want to establish the run. Derrick Henry, incredible. Lamar Jackson, incredible. Then the number one target by far and away is Zay Flowers. Then everything after that, in whatever order you have it, is next in priority. So unfortunately, unless he's given red zone opportunity to score a touchdown, the terrified, I guess, emotion that you're feeling is very much so justified going forward. But again, when you compare it to the rest of the tight end field, it's not like there's much better out there. Like, we haven't seen a lot of production from the tight end position. Like, when you compare weeks 1 through 3 of last season to weeks 1 through 3 of this season, it's pretty similar as to what we have seen in terms of total productivity. There's very, like what? I think this time last year, there were like 14 tight ends that had over 10 fantasy points in the first 3 weeks. And this season, there's like 11. So like 3 less. So in terms of overall upside of production, we haven't, we're in a similar range ultimately, but it's, again, the tight end position as a whole is a disaster. So I understand you're panicking, but what is there to do besides hit the waivers at this point? That's really it. We're not going to go trade for anybody because everybody sucks. It is what it is. Xander O'Malley sends in a question, says, how far did Fields jump Bucky or Shakir in the waivers? Yeah, look, there's a reason why I added Khalil Shakir as the thumbnail of this live stream. I went on Yahoo just before, because we were putting together the graphics, and I was like, all right, let's see here. What is the rostership percentage of Khalil Shakir? And I saw it was 65%, and I threw up in my mouth a little bit. I was like, I'm pretty sick to my stomach. This is ridiculous. The guy that was obviously getting himself a great volume of targets last season with Josh Allen was the only wide receiver that had rapport with Josh Allen going into the season, because everybody else had, disappeared and gone through free agency or was cut. And then he scores a touchdown week 1. He leads the team in targets week 2, and then does it again in week 3, and now scores a touchdown as well. I mean, if he's not already rostered, he should be. If you're in need of running back depth, of course, you could try to address Bucky, but Shakir is the number one target for Josh Allen. I understand everybody scored today, but it was very clear, a very abundantly clear, that in the short passing receiving game, it was all James Cook and Shakir, and that's who dominated. Everything else was just deep passing touchdowns because the coverage sucked. So as of right now, those are the two that Shakir is the one that I would lean towards, especially in a full PPR. But if you need the running back depth because you have injuries or just don't have consistent players, Bucky's not a bad option at all going forward. HCF sends in a question. Thank you, HCF. Says Tank Dell, Braylon Allen, McLaurin, Deontay, Hubbard, Juwan Jennings, rank them in terms of waiver priority. Got it. So in terms of rest of season value, Hubbard is going to have to be last because, again, Jonathan Brooks will eventually return. So actually, you know what? Let me redact that statement. Juwan Jennings is actually last in terms of waiver priority amongst all these players that you have here. Again, the list is Tank Dell, Braylon Allen, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Hubbard, and Juwan Jennings. So Juwan Jennings is last. Second to last is Hubbard. Third to last would then at that point be, let's say, it's very much so dependent on team need, but let's say third to last is Braylon Allen. So yeah, there's 6. So 6 would be Juwan Jennings, 5 would be Hubbard, 4 would be Braylon Allen, 3 would be Tank Dell, 2 would be McLaurin, 1 would be Deontay Johnson. That's the way that I would roll it. So I'd go after Deontay Johnson immediately, especially because of that injury to the legendary Adam Thielen. I knew he'd pull through for the hidden gems. I fucking knew it. And he did it. God bless his soul. He did get injured on that receiving touchdown, but we'll take it. He went out with a bang. Anyway, so that's how I'd rank it. Thank you, HC. Mark G sends in a question, says, I got Chase and ETN for Gibbs and Waddle last week. Thank you. You're very welcome. Listen, Chase was bound to have a pop-off game. For those of you who invested and traded for him, congratulations. That's the kind of moves you need to make to win a championship, and I'm glad that he's obviously showing signs of life. But that was the easiest matchup that he'll maybe see the whole season. So henceforth, there's going to be more challenge. But again, he's still a top-tier player. We know that for sure. He's going to put up great performances every week going forward. Now, as for losing Gibbs and getting ETN in exchange, ETN is it's a tough situation, but what is promising is that we didn't see much of Tank Bigsby within the game, which of course just kind of solidifies that this is an ETN offense going forward. God's Gang says, I have Likely as my starting tight end. Let me go back up and let me see what exactly. Got it. Najee and yeah. But again, you have likely as your starting tight end right now, but eventually it'll be Njoku, which I'm comfortable with. So really, I'm not going to suggest that you go out and make a potential trade for a tight end. I don't think it's necessary in your scenario God's getting. Again, it's just a matter of moving one of those two quarterbacks and trying to get as much potential value in return. Thank you again. Michael Barton sends in a question. Says, trade Ford for Tank Dell in a full PPR. Yeah, I have no issue with that. Again, you got to remember Nick Chubb's going to come back eventually. As to when, again, there hasn't really been any reports or public statements made that I have seen, at least personally. Maybe there has been and I've completely missed it and it's not been on my radar. But eventually Nick Chubb will return and it will siphon about, effective value from Ford. And when we consider the fact that the Cleveland Browns are awful because Deshaun Watson just, has put them in a really bad situation. Obviously, both of their starting tackles this season have been injured, but now their starting guard, one of a former All-Pro, former Pro Bowl guard, is going to the injured reserve because I think he tore his pec or his bicep, something of that nature. I know I read it earlier today. I'm not exactly sure what the injury is, but I know he's going to miss time. It just makes it that much more difficult for Deshaun Watson to find success and for the running game to find success effectively. So, yeah, I'll make that trade. I know Dell's dealing with an injury right now, but hopefully he can recover from that sooner rather than later. Thoughts on Trey Tucker? I think it's a lot of garbage time receiving upside there. Outside of that, I'm not really too interested with it. Bucky Irving or Braylon Allen? I think it's very dependent on what your point of stance is on, let's just put it this way. If you have Rachaad White, I'd probably pick up Bucky Irving. But if you don't, I prefer Braylon Allen. That's why in this video from earlier today, I had Braylon Allen as the number one. I think there's a far more promising two-headed monster that has already proven that they're going to continue with that approach for the remainder of the season, considering the success of volume that they've already found. The volume of success, excuse me. And then your next question, Shakir, the number one of Josh Allen. Yeah, that was anticipated and has continued to hold true. And would you start Jawan Jennings this week? Yeah, I mean, if the expectation is that Debo and Kittle miss again, even if Kittle plays, I'm still gonna roll out with Jawan Jennings. He was look on Saturday morning. I think I had him as my number 30th ranked wide receiver. Obviously not high enough, but who would have fucking guessed 41 fantasy points? But yeah. Definitely going to start him this week. We'll continue the momentum if we need that one start play. Jeremy Melendez sends in a question. Says in a 12-man full PPR, 12-man full PPR, 2 flex league. I'm 0-3 currently. I have CJ Stroud, Garrett Wilson, Ridley, Gibbs, Swift, Laporta, Bowers. Very well. Traded Wilson for London and Brian Robinson Jr. today. Traded Wilson for London. Yeah, great, fantastic. Sounds good to me. That is fantastic, especially considering Brian Robinson Jr. continues to play well. They continue to prioritize the running game in a Cliff Kingsbury offense, which again isn't something that they've consistently done in the past. But then again, as long as you continue to get the goal line opportunities in the direction of your studs, it's going to be fine. This upcoming week, we'll probably have Austin Eckler out because of the concussion protocol. So obviously that is going to give you a little bit more of a boost there. But London's been great, obviously scoring touchdowns in open fashion. As for outside of that, if I was in your position, Jeremy Melendez, I'm trading Laporta. Obviously, you might want to wait until he has a big performance, but you cannot rely on Swift. Ridley, again, is very inconsistent, and Laporta probably needs to be moved, and you roll with Bowers the rest of the season. Flotation Swag says, I sent you something on Twitter. Check. Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and check this out. What did you send, my man? Did you end up winning by like a half a point or something? Says, Andrew, headed to 2-1. This is my next week matchup. Slightly worried if Eckler doesn't play. But I guess I got Pat consistency and Laporta. Laporta bit a bust so far, but I'm hoping he pops off if he even plays. I mean, I don't know if he plays, depending on, of course, how severe that ankle injury is. But even earlier last season, when he did sustain an injury in week 18, he wasn't expected to play in the wild card game against the Rams, but he suited up anyway. The guy's a tough son of a gun. So, I mean, that's what happens when you come out of Iowa. They got a lot of tough son of a guns out of the tight end university over there. So in regards to your team, again, ETN, Singletary, Adams, Cooper, Lockett played extremely well. Hopefully Laporta suits up. If he doesn't, of course, you have Freiermuth in exchange. But yeah, you probably need to hit the waiver wire. Probably look to drop that Cowboys defense that honestly at this point you're not going to need after maybe this week. And even then, I don't even know if I want to play them this week considering how bad they've looked and a short week of football. So ultimately, Corum could be dropped. Reynolds can be dropped. Cowboys defense can be dropped. We got to go pick up options just in case Eckler is not available in this circumstance come next Sunday if he's still in the concussion protocol. As for who's available, you can you can tweet it at me or you can DM me on Twitter and we can talk about it. Thank you. Jorge sends in a question, says, give it to me straight. If I don't have Mason, do I drop Christian McCaffrey and move on for the rest of season? My mistake? No. Why would you? Clogging my bench with no IR. You wouldn't drop him. If you don't want Christian McCaffrey, you trade him. That's it. But I would say, Jorge, you invested in McCaffrey. If we don't get him returning after the IR stint and he misses another additional like 3 weeks after that, yeah, it's probably smart that if you're like currently 1-2 or 0-3, and you're like, listen, it's not looking good. I might not be able to make the playoffs unless I string together wins now. You don't drop him. You trade him, and you try to get the best value out of him potentially possible. Because I'm sure there are teams in your league that are currently 3-0, have hit on a lot of their draft picks, whether it's because of injury or because of just sheer luck, and they have an abundance of running back depth that they're willing to give away to you, or maybe even a running back and a receiver, because they're like, hey, you know what? I'm willing to invest in McCaffrey, and once he returns, I'll have a 25-point player. But yeah, you absolutely need to not drop him, but drop him onto somebody else's team via a trade. Zhan says, last week you said I should trade Kyron, Corum, Terry McLaurin for Jacobs and Olave. Did this week change anything? I mean, in terms of the overall usage of Jacobs, it will improve. I think Terry McLaurin obviously scoring huge touchdowns down the field is not going to be a consistent part of his offense. Understand that, again, when it's going to be very similar to an Alec Pierce. Hopefully it won't be, because Terry McLaurin is a better talent, but when you're getting majority of your production out of 2 receptions, both of them being 20, 30, 40 plus yards down the field, those are typically not going to be consistent options. And the way that offense functions is really just about the short passing game, and then additionally on top of that, running game. So Terry, I'm not too worried about. I surely, without a doubt, prefer Olave. Jacobs' value is purely going to be associated with how good Jordan Love in this offense is going to be. So I'd say you give it some time and let's see how it produces. Obviously, Kyron coming off of a monster performance. If Kittle was in that game, I think the 49ers probably blow them out pretty quickly. And then on top of that, they probably get into a situation where Kyron isn't even given the opportunity to run the ball 40 or 24 times, which was pretty much, the entire offense. If you go back to that game, Stafford at the end of the first quarter had 0 completions for 0 yards. Like, the offense was completely cooked, but the 49ers gave them enough opportunities to get back into the game. I'm sure if they had a healthy 49ers team, offensively, that game would have been over real quick. But yeah, don't worry about Jacobs. He'll be fine. Half PPR. I also have Kyler, Saquon, Walker, McBride. Again, you got a lot of studs, man. You got a lot of studs. Hopefully Walker can get healthy and get back this week. McBride, you're probably going to need a backup for. Thielen is also dealing with an injury. Yeah, you got a lot of injuries in this scenario, but hopefully trending in the right direction here. Drew King sends in a question. Says, in a 10-team league, I'm trading Aaron Jones, Zach Moss, Jacobs, Ayuk for DJ Moore, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Mason. You think he accepts? I think it's relatively strong across the board. Ultimately, I think depending on, whoever gets Mason better have McCaffrey. Otherwise, I don't really want that Mason side per se. I'd rather have the other side, to be honest. But I think it's a pretty equal trade if in fact that is the case. If the person who gets Mason doesn't have McCaffrey, I think the other side probably is going to, just off of pure fantasy point totals, is going to be more valuable at the end of it all. But it is enticing to trade for Taylor and Justin Jefferson, even if you don't have McCaffrey and you get Mason, which is, again, the risk you would have to take for those top-tier players, which honestly I don't mind. Just depends on what your team is kind of constructed of in the 10-team format. Tex Raid said, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, my wide receivers are Collins, London, JSN, McLaurin, Kirk, Christian Watson. Okay, so there were some signs of life for you this week. Sell high, or should I hold for now? Look, anytime you can sell high and get better players that haven't produced as well, you should. So if you can go out there and find someone who has A.J. Brown on their team, Tex Raid, and give them McLaurin and Christian McCaffrey, and they're like, oh yeah, I need the wide receiver depth. I can't deal with this injury, Great, fantastic, we'll take it. Someone's got Ayuk sitting on their team, and they're like, I can't trust this guy. Great, we'll take it. If there are wide receivers out there that have been undervalued based on their production, that quite frankly we know is better than, or we know that they are better than what they have produced thus far, just like the same way in which we knew that McLaurin would eventually find himself success, we'll definitely go and try to make a move for that for sure. Otherwise, Collins and London shouldn't move. Those are the two guys that you for sure want to have as your 1 and 2 going forward. Jordan McQueen sends in a question, says, my wide receivers are Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Pickens, BTJ, Ladd. Tight ends are Mark Andrews and Ingram. Somebody wants one of Marvin Harrison or Neighbors for Bowers and JSN. Yes or no? No, not interested. I'd keep the tight ends you have. You're good to go. Thank you. Alex Olivas says, Andrew, in a half PPR, I'm hurting on wide receiver. I have Waddle, London, Shaheed, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jaden Reed. Okay, I mean, look, I don't think you're... Okay, so you're struggling because of Waddle, but once we do get back a healthy Jordan Love, again, Jaden Reed gets back into that top 24 conversation, in my opinion. And, of course, Drake London has shown fantastic performances over the course of the last 2 weeks. Shaheed is going to be inconsistent as ever. Because, again, that is just the nature of the beast when we talk about making receptions deep down the field. He could have had a touchdown. Obviously had multiple end zone opportunities this last week, but, again, wasn't able to haul them in. So I'm not too worried there. So you're looking to potentially, solid at running back, hold firm, or attempt to ship out Waddle and Jerome Ford. If you can swap or ship out Waddle and Ford and bring back some wide receiver depth that is much needed, then let's go for it for sure. Because Ford, I don't think really has much value, but if somebody wants to put a value on him that is greater than what you currently have him at for your team, then for sure make a move. Daniel Barnes sends in a question, says Fields, Caleb Williams, or Derek Carr rest of the season. If Fields plays the entire season, I believe that he will be the highest scoring quarterback of the bunch. That's how I currently believe it's going to pan out. Now, as for the second best quarterback of the bunch, it's going to be Caleb Williams. I know he hasn't started off hot, but I'm telling you, the Heisman stat of outside of Bryce Young, who again got benched the other day, every quarterback that has won a Heisman over the course of the last 10 Heisman trophy winning quarterbacks, everyone except for Bryce Young has averaged over 17 fantasy points their rookie season. Derek Carr, typically throughout his entire career, either ranks quarterback 13 and 20. That is where he is at. He will probably finish in the middle of the pack, somewhere between 16 to 18, because that is where Derek Carr typically relies or kind of hangs out every season. And he always has a couple games where he'll either tear his groin or get a concussion or get injured, and then he'll miss some time, because that's just what Derek Carr does. But yeah, Fields, Caleb Williams, Derek Carr, that's the order. As for streaming defense for this weekend, KC for week 4, yeah, especially if Justin Herbert's going to be injured, I do not mind that at all. But again, typically a lot of leagues do not have the availability of the Kansas City defense because typically, again, they're rostered in a high percentage. Thank you. Nate Sofla says, would you take Roma Dunze from the waivers or Devontae Adams rest of season? And put these... Wait. Would you take Roma Dunze over Devontae Adams? No. I'd rather have Devontae Adams. It's not even close. It's not even remotely close. One is a legit wide receiver one, and the other is just had a great, welcome to the NFL. Great, listen, fantastic. We love it. 11 targets, 6 receptions, over 100 yards. We love it. Somebody made me a lot of money. I think it was Robert the other day recommended that I have higher on Roma Dunze's overall yardage on Underdog, and that entire slipped cash earlier today, I think for like $70, $10 for 70. It was pretty good. But in regards to rest of the season, yeah, it's Devontae Adams. It's not even close. As for the rest of your team, let's see here. London, Devontae Smith, Roma Dunze, Devontae Adams. Yeah, I'd like to keep all of them. But for sure, Adams is probably your most valuable wide receiver as of right now. Now, as for put these wide receivers in order, yeah, if I was to order them for rest of season value, let's say, for example, Devontae Smith's injury is not bad. I'd probably go like Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith, London, Roma Dunze in that order, rest of season. Thank you. Failures No Option says Montgomery, Wilson for Jefferson. I think it very much so depends on what kind of a format you're in. If we're in a situation where there's no context to the team that you have, failures no option, I'd probably say you keep Montgomery and Wilson. If you tell me you're playing in a 6-team or an 8-team league and you have so many studs across the board that really you just have to give away 2-for-1s, then I have no problem with it. But typically I want to keep, studs as where they're at, especially when Montgomery just continues to score touchdowns and doesn't look like he's slowing down. I know that the center for the Detroit Lions today did end up, they did confirm that he tore his pec, if I'm not mistaken. So that is definitely a huge loss for them. in terms of the running game, but ultimately I'd probably still keep Montgomery and Wilson unless you have, again, an 8-team, 10-team league where you're just stacked across the board. Z-Hen says, in a half PPR flex, do I drop DeMarcus Robinson for Wan'Dale Robinson? Yes, absolutely. All right, Pritesh sends in a question. Says, running backs are Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Pollard, Najee Harris. Okay, pretty solid there. Wide receivers are Diggs, Worthy, Reed. Okay, here's your issue. And Watson. Should I go for Jennings on the waivers or buy low on a wide receiver? Jennings is a 1 to 2 week fix. So he will probably play this week and the week after in the absence of Debo and or Kittle. And then afterward is probably going to not have as much value as you would like. So at that point, if you're looking for rest of season sustained value, it would be in the other options of a Darnell Mooney or potentially Quentin Johnston, of the players that I mentioned on my waiver wire video earlier today. So if in fact there are other available options like a Deontay Johnson, somehow, some way somebody dropped him, let's do that. Jeff sends in a question. Speaking of Deontay Johnson, says DJ Moore or Deontay Johnson? I'd still trust that DJ Moore is in a better position. I understand that obviously Deontay's coming off an incredible performance, but DJ Moore will eventually find himself far more success going forward. It's just, again, we're going to need to wait for Caleb Williams to find his groove. Carlton Collins says, in an 8-team full PPR league, I'm 2-1. I have Stroud, I have Bijan, I have Pollard, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Neighbors, Laporta. My bench consists of Ferguson, Rashad White, Harris, Higgins, Cooper, Dobbins, and Ford. Any moves? I don't think you need to make moves. If you would like, I think there's a possibility in which you can take Amari Cooper off of that huge performance, considering he will probably sit on your bench for the entirety of the rest of the season, because I would not play him over Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, or Neighbors. You could probably take him and try to go get another running back. So maybe, yes, you have Bijan, Pollard, but maybe you take Cooper and Pollard and try to go make a huge upgrade at that position. I think that's probably the best scenario. Or maybe, you could take Cooper and Dobbins, or Cooper and Harris, Cooper and Rashad White. Just try to go upgrade a running back so that you have a solidified RB2 that you can never worry about going forward. Pitch Herndon says, waiver Kmet in bench Laporta, Rams second worst versus tight end. So here's the deal. Laporta may not play, so you may not even have a decision. You may have to pick him up and play him regardless. So in this scenario, yes, you need to probably waiver Kmet just to make sure that you have a replacement in case Laporta does not play, which, again, there's a relatively high likelihood that could play, that could take place. Now, let's say, for example, Laporta even still suits up. I don't think it's a bad idea to play Kmet instead, because, again, if we're going to have a hobbled Laporta, really, how much production are we potentially anticipating to see from him? MIGC sends in a question. Says, worried about T? No, I'm not worried about T Higgins. Again, he had a lot of opportunity down in the red zone, enough to where it makes me confident that they know how to utilize him down in those overall red zone packages. So I'm not too worried about that overall situation. If not, should I package BRJ, as in Brian Robinson Jr., and T Higgins for a wide receiver one? Devontae, maybe? I would probably want something more. I think Brian Robinson Jr. has done enough to increase his value to an extent to where you might be able to get somebody better than Devontae Adams at this point. So maybe you can go after A.J. Brown, maybe? You never know. Just depends on which teams need a wide receiver. But if you ask me, like, hey, would you rather have Devontae Adams or T. Higgins and BRJ? I'd probably keep BRJ and T. Higgins at the moment. Thank you. God's Gang sends out a question. Says, okay, who would you trade away, Murray or ice cold Jaden Daniels? It's tough for me. Okay, let me put it this way. Kyler Murray and myself don't have the greatest rapport/relationship. The amount of times I've been burnt by Kyler Murray in the past is ridiculous. So if it was me, I'd probably just take the hot hand and roll with it, and just take whatever rookie struggles come with it. And I would take Murray because he's more of an... Well, you know what? To be honest, I don't care who I keep. I want the most value that I can get for a trade. So if Jaden Daniels is going to get you a better haul in return, then you trade him and you make that move. Because ultimately, both, again, are still going to be top 8 quarterbacks rest of the season. If you're going to have let's say, for example, Murray rest season 8 and Jaden Daniels is 5, the biggest difference between that on a per week average is at most 1.5 points, which, again, ultimately is not going to make a huge difference to the point to where I'm losing my mind or losing sleep at night. So to this scenario, whatever brings the biggest haul back in return. Flotation Swag says, check Twitter. Yes, I will. Thank you. All right. On waivers is Andre Yoshivas, Emmanuel Wilson, Calvin Austin, not interested there. Tolbert, okay. Atwell, Spears. Who would you grab? I can drop Corum, Cowboys, and Reynolds. Also, a buddy wants to trade me Kyle Pitts and DeAndre Hopkins for Laporta. Not a good trade in my... Yeah, I'm not interested in DeAndre. No. And Kyle Pitts is being ignored completely. Again, the number 1 and 2 options clear and away are London and Mooney. And then the next option in that offense that takes the next highest priority is even Bijan in the receiving game. So, and shoot, even Ray McLeod is a better, target opportunity maker within that offense in comparison to Pitts. So we're not really interested there right now. So as for who you could pick up, Andre Yoshivas seems like he's not going anywhere. His role, again, is pretty much the Tyler Boyd role. Again, we have seen Tyler Boyd in seasons past be great for this offense in great matchups, so that's something that is very much so appealing. But outside of Yoshivas, out of the available options here, I think it's probably Tyjae Spears, which I'm interested in. I like the matchup against them going up against the Miami Dolphins this week, in case, of course, we do have a missing Austin Eckler. So those two would be great. The third best option out of what you've mentioned, I guess technically could be Atwell as a pick up and immediately play against the Chicago Bears. But I don't really love the matchup. But again, they're putting Atwell, Tutu Atwell in scenarios in which he's crossing the middle of the field, the Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp role, wide open, and really it's very easy for him to gain yardage in those scenarios. So those would be the 3 that I'd suggest for right now. As to who we play, TBD. Mike Doe sends in a question, says, in a 10-team PPR league, got it, I have Allen, Achane, Montgomery, Jet, as in Justin Jefferson, Rice, Kincaid, Flowers, Puka Nacua, Shakir, Singletary, Mostert, Gesicki, Eckler, Chubb. Got offered Kenneth Walker for Shakir and Achane. Yeah, I'd probably say no to that. I think Achane, again, if we get a better quarterback in there, I know that they did sign Tyler Huntley to the practice squad last week. They didn't elevate him yet because, again, he still needs to learn the offense, but hopefully quick learner and can get out there and be a far better option than what Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle produced on Sunday in Seattle. So going forward, I'd probably keep what you have. Especially if you don't have Charbonnet. That's really the scary factor of making a trade of that kind of capacity, especially considering you have Achane and Mostert for the handcuff ability. Seventh Season says, should I trade Gesicki and or pick up Strange? Strange is only going to have value in the absence of Evan Ingram. So if Evan Ingram's going to miss another week, I don't mind having Brenton Strange. Again, he's someone that we mentioned last week in terms of waiver options that you could go after if, in fact, we're going to still see the missing nature of Ingram. But I think Gesicki's fine. 4 receptions, 47 is not the greatest overall game. But I think going forward, again, he will be, given opportunities to be somewhat relevant. 6.7 fantasy points and a half PPR, or technically 8.7 at the tight end positions, not bad at all, especially considering what the rest of the field looks like. So I'd probably keep, again, Strange is on like a time bomb of, activity, considering, again, Ingram will return sooner rather than later, hopefully, of course. Thank you again for the questions, guys. Okay, so for those of you who are joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Again, very interesting week 3 thus far. For those of you who have not yet already, do me a favor, click the like button down below. It continues to help support the channel. Let's see what you guys have to say in the live chat in terms of some questions here. That question is, trade Olave for Garrett Wilson. I don't mind it. Personally, I don't mind it. I think they've got relatively similar value rest of the season, but I do trust Garrett Wilson's talent more than Olave. So as long as he gets ample opportunity going forward, which I think it will get easier with the upcoming matchups not being so difficult with cornerbacks, Garrett Wilson will probably outvalue him. So yeah, I don't mind that trade at all. My only question is, should I drop, what's that, Justin Tucker for Chris Boswell? Says KND. Should I drop Justin Tucker for Chris Boswell? Dropping Justin Tucker typically over the course of the history of fantasy football, I'd say isn't the greatest idea. Justin Tucker, if I'm not mistaken, I'd like to just confirm this just so I have a reference point before I make a statement of the magnitude that I'm about to. So when I look at the production of kicker over the course of the last, let's say 5 years, okay? 2023, Justin Tucker, the number 2 overall kicker. Okay, let's go to 2022. He was the number 1 overall kicker. 2021 was the number 3 overall kicker. 2020 was the number 7 overall kicker. 2019 was the number 3 overall kicker. 2018 was the number 2 overall kicker. So basically, from the last 5-6 seasons, depending on which kind of time frame you want to utilize, he has always been a top 7 kicker, but predominantly a top 3 kicker in fantasy. So I think the history of success of Justin Tucker, I understand he's coming off a week in which he missed the field goal, you may not have had as many fantasy points. The history of his production kind of implies that he is going to still be an extremely relevant kicker. It's not something that we need to freak out about and move on from him because, again, we know he's one of the best in the league and a future Hall of Famer. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from Braden. Braden says, any moves to make? I want a wide receiver. I think I got... Okay, so you have Lamar, Kamara, JT, Wilson, Devontae Smith, Jameson Williams, Brian Robinson, Quentin Johnston, Shaheed, Steele, Pierce, Bowers, Gesicki, and Ingram. Okay, so you've got a really strong team here. Lamar, again, a stud. Kamara and JT playing well. Wilson, Devontae Smith. Again, Devontae Smith hopefully is going to be healthy. Wilson will get better over time. You have Jameson Williams, who, again, is going to only get better in terms of potential for opportunity in the absence of a Laporta potentially here. Brian Robinson Jr. has been playing extremely well. Quentin Johnston is on the right track. Shaheed, again, is a little bit of a coin flip player. Steele, again, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe you want to take Steele right now and maybe move him in a trade perhaps to the Pacheco manager. You have Pierce, you have Bowers. Okay, so Bowers is your starting tight end, which is great. You have Gesicki, you have Ingram. So yeah, in this scenario, Braden, I have no issue. Let's say, for example, you're in a 3 wide receiver league. You have to keep Jameson Williams. You have to. If you're not, you could theoretically try to take him right now and move him, but I think you're probably in a situation where you want to keep him just in case Devontae Smith is going to miss some sort of time. So really, your trading pieces in terms of hot on the block players that you can move right now are quite literally just Johnston, Shaheed, and that's it. And maybe Steele. As for what you can get in return for them, I don't think you'll be able to get a lot of value, but technically, again, Johnston has scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. Shaheed has scored 2 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks. And Steele was decent. So maybe you could end up swindling some sort of value off of a team ultimately. If not, I think you're pretty strong to not move anything and still stay stable within the scenario because, again, you got a lot of studs across the board. But if you can, Johnston and Shaheed are guys that I'd like to ship. JK sends in a question. JK says the following. He says, in a full PPR 12-team league, we have Richardson, Adams, London, Rice, Higgins, Watson, Taylor, Jones, Singletary. Oh my God. Okay. Got a lot of options here. Dowdle, Tracy, Jonathan Brooks, likely Muth. I feel like I need a second quarterback. Should I? Okay, yeah, you do need a second quarterback. Absolutely. With Richardson there, you absolutely do. Should I drop a tight end? Yeah. Considering you do have, you know what? Let me think about this. I would probably drop Tyrone Tracy Jr. That's who I would drop. And I would go pick up a second quarterback. Outside of that, I don't think you need to really make any moves per se. I think you've got a lot of, Taylor, Jones, Singletary, solid. Adams, London, once Higgins finds his stretch, fine. But then you also have Rice. So you're good across the board. Just need a little bit more quarterback depth or potentially a quarterback that could give you the option of playing them over Richardson. Again, if someone like Sam Darnold's still available, Aaron Rodgers, somebody like that, something we might want to explore as a potential option going forward. LOLG says, should I trade Achane/Debo for JJ and ETN? Yeah, I will take Justin Jefferson and ETN rest season. I don't have an issue with that. That's fine by me. Sven or Zen, or I think it's Sven, says 2-1, 12-man league, half PPR league, looking to upgrade my flex and my RB2. My quarterback is Hurts. My wide receivers are Amon-Ra, Olave, DJ Moore, BTJ, Deontay Johnson, very well. Gibbs, Moss, Chuba Hubbard, Steele, Warren, Javante. Okay, cool. Yeah, look, at this point, if you want to upgrade your flex and RB2, you're taking Chuba Hubbard and you're taking Deontay Johnson and you're selling as hot as possible. Because I prefer everybody else on this team rest of season to the point to where those are the two that are coming off of great weeks. You can sell, guys, look what they did with Andy Dalton. Now they get him for the rest of the season. Take them off my hands because obviously I think they're, well, maybe, okay, look, you might have to silver tongue it a little bit, show up and say, hey, I want to give you, DJ Moore. And then they decline and say, how about Deontay Johnson? And then you kind of swindle them there. But in this scenario, those are the two that I'm trying to move. And yeah, in your scenario, I would probably say look for a better flex because you can survive with the RBs you have. But yeah, probably look for a better flex. So whether that is a running back or a wide receiver doesn't matter, in my opinion. Thank you, Sven. Flotation Swag says Mooney over Tyjae Spears. Yes, all of those. Mooney would be the best option for sure. Mooney would be number 1, and then probably Yoshi Voss second for in terms of rest of season potential value there. Adam99 sends in a question. Says, should I trade Bijan, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin for AJ? Okay, we got a lot of context here. Bijan, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin. So we're selling hot on the 2 wide receivers for AJ Brown, Kamara, and Zamir White. I have no interest in Zamir White. So theoretically, you'd be trading Bijan, Deontay, and McLaurin for AJ Brown and Kamara. So, for example, if everyone was healthy, okay, if everyone was healthy across the board, I think Bijan and AJ Brown's potential value, half PPR, full PPR, is comparable. Then it's just a matter of, do you want wide receiver depth or do you want Kamara? Which leads me to believe it's just a matter of what your team looks like. You have Henry, Neighbors, Diggs, Hurts, Stevenson, Kirk. What does that say? Ferguson and Brian Thomas Jr. with okay, got it. Okay. So you currently have the Bijan, Deontay, and McLaurin scenario here. Would we try to make this trade to get the rest? You have Neighbors, you have Diggs, so you'd have Neighbors and AJ Brown, Henry and Kamara. Yeah, I don't mind this trade. I don't have an issue with it at all. If you get the AJ Brown Kamara side, I think I'm perfectly fine there, Adam. Thank you for the question. LOLG says, or Achane for Wilson and Aaron Jones. Let me scroll back up to the other question that you sent in. HF for Wilson. Yeah, that works too. I guess it depends, right? Like if you don't want to give away Debo, then I can understand it, and that's a pretty good alternative option to the trade. But if you're comfortable giving away Debo, I think again, JJ's got a lot of value. But again, it's very much so up to what you want to hold on your team. So if in fact you do want to keep Debo, or somebody's not willing to take Debo because of the injury, I don't mind this trade either. Getting Garrett Wilson and Aaron Jones for Achane, I have no issue with that at all. Thank you. Let's see here. We scroll down. We have KB Games 901 who says, should I start Mahomes or Fields? We will know that by Thursday's quarterback rankings video. Off the top of my head, I don't even think I know who the Chiefs play this week. I'm going to be honest. I'm trying to think off the top. No, they play the Chargers. It's kind of hard not to play them against the Chargers. But then Fields takes on Indianapolis, which is as good of a matchup as you could possibly ask for. Again, Thursday. We'll know that by Thursday. Brayden sends in a follow-up, says, do I ship Shaheed and Gesicki for Deontay Johnson? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. That would be a great, I think that's a great addition. JC Too Much says, 12-man half PPR, trade AJ Brown and Stevenson for Justin Jefferson and Brian Thomas Jr. Okay, so here's the deal. Objectively, I think if AJ Brown comes back fully healthy, he should have comparable value to JJ. Not obviously as much, but close enough to where it's in the conversation. If we think so low of Stevenson to where we're giving him up for BTJ, then sure, but I don't think that low of Stevenson. He had a really bad week 3, and I think he will be better going forward. So I'd probably keep the AJ Brown Stevenson side of this deal, especially when you're giving up running back depth. If you don't have good enough running back depth, JC, it would be very difficult for me to be considering making this kind of move. Let's see here. Molly G sends in a question. Says, in a 14-team full PPR, I'm 0-3. My quarterbacks are Jaden Daniels, Tua Tagovailoa. So basically you have Jaden Daniels. Tua Tagovailoa, again, is to be determined whether he even returns. You have James Cook, Moss, Mostert, and Braylon Allen. Okay, so you have James Cook, Moss, and Braylon Allen because Mostert, again, still injured. A lot of the Dolphins hit with injury thus far. You have McBride, who's injured. Okay, so another injury. You have Tyreek Hill, who's pretty much, again, a shell of himself without a quarterback. Ayuk, which is a shell of himself as well. Jameson Williams. Again, I'm being brutally honest. I don't mean to like shit on your team, Molly. It's just what you and I have both witnessed. There's a reason why you're 0-3. Because again, you've been put in a pretty tough situation here. Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, JSN, Alec Pierce, and Dortch. What should I do? You got to start making moves. If we can get a confirmation that Tyreek Hill is going to have Tyler Huntley at quarterback, then I feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of keeping him. But I think in terms of moves that need to be made, Jaden Daniels doesn't move. James Cook looked great. Moss got himself a lot of opportunity. Obviously, we'll still have Chase Brown in his back pocket, but we'll, for right now, have to keep it as such. Braylon Allen's great as a third running back. McBride doesn't move, but likely is going to be there for this week in case the concussion protocol doesn't get cleared. But yeah, as of wide receiver help, it's needed. And I think taking like a JSN, Tyreek Hill, and trying to go trade up for a wide receiver could be something of a plan. If in fact, again, the Miami Dolphins do not change their quarterback. If they do change their quarterback, I'd be willing to give it another shot for one more week here before I do make a move in a 14-team, format. Thank you. All right, how long have we been here for? Just want to confirm. I've been here for an hour and about 7 minutes. Again, for those of you joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Typically, I do live stream every night or at least once a day. So again, as the week progresses, we will continue to live stream tomorrow night before waivers run. We'll continue to try to answer questions over the course of that live stream. But for those of you joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope, week 3 went well. If it didn't, hopefully your team at least stayed healthy. That's what we're hoping for. Andrew, is Shakir a start now? I think he was a start in certain formats, but as a confirmed top 36 wide receiver, I think, going forward, it's kind of set in stone. A lot of players are beginning to set their value in stone, or at least revitalize their value to get into a consistent position of at least being starters. Like Michael Pittman Jr., for right now, might be dead to me. We'll see. Obviously, they take on the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, which is not a great matchup. But again, a lot of toughness going on in some of those scenarios. But hopefully, we'll just find more consistency as we continue here. So I'm guessing you're way down on Tyreek. Look, I'm only down on him because, again, he doesn't have a quarterback. If he had a quarterback, we'd have no issues, right? If they had Mac Jones at quarterback, if they had Bryce Young throwing the ball right now instead of Tim Boyle, we'd be in heaven. I mean, shoot, even on Sunday there was a route in which Tyreek. I mean, I was watching that game closely because I was looking for those HN receptions. There was a route on Sunday where he runs a post over the middle in cover 2, splits the safeties. He's wide open, but Skylar Thompson doesn't get the ball out of his hands quick enough. Like, I don't know, Skylar Thompson's seeing ghosts out there, but with a better quarterback, significantly more value. But unfortunately, we have to wait until we find out where the value is. Richardson only got me 5.8. Brother, you don't got to tell me. I know. It's rough. It is rough. 10 or fewer completions in 2 of the 3 games makes Richardson seem like everything that was said last season prior to Richardson coming out in terms of like, this guy is not a polished passer. He is going to struggle in the NFL. He doesn't have very many starts in Florida. He didn't look good at Florida. Everything is starting to come to fruition, even though the first 3 full starts of his NFL career looked great. Everything after that has now been just disastrous. Teams are beginning to figure him out a little bit here, or at least figuring out what gives him problems to whether they can continue to exploit those things and hurt his potential for, passing the ball down the field. Okay, we continue on with a question that came in from Tan Fam, who says, in a full PPR 12-team league, I have Purdy, Charbonnet, David Montgomery, Etienne, Jerome Ford, Mike Evans, Flowers, Rashee Rice, Garrett Wilson, Goddard as my tight end. Cooper Kupp is on the IR. Should I trade for an elite running back? Technically, yes. If you can, you should. Charbonnet's not going to last. And I don't know if Etienne's going to be able to cut it outside of being a flex for your team. So maybe you take Etienne and somebody else, maybe one of these great wide receivers you have, and go shopping for an elite running back for sure. I think that's probably a great idea in your scenario, considering how much wide receiver depth you have. What you should be keeping on roster is, without a doubt, Rice. Everybody else at wide receiver is expendable after that. Samuel Walker says, trade Zach Moss for Ayuk in a PPR. If you don't need the running back depth, I'm perfectly fine with that move. Thank you. Let's see here. Jordan McQueen sends in a question, says, my wide receivers are JJ, J-Mo, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Jaden Reed, Wanda Robinson. We have Kamara, Jacobs, Ramondre, Tyjae Spears. PPR league, should I drop Tyjae Spears and Wanda Robinson for Bucky, Emmanuel Sanders, or... Okay, so yeah, this is what I'd say objectively. I think that in your scenario, Braylon Allen should be picked up for Tyjae Spears. As for dropping Wandale Robinson, considering your wide receiver depth consists of JJ, J-Mo, T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Reed, you don't theoretically need Wandale Robinson. Obviously, I'd like to trade him because he has relatively good value to where once you drop him, he will be picked up by somebody else. But I won't be upset about losing him if you can still get Braylon Allen and Bucky Irving in return. So if you can bring both those running backs in, fantastic. But do prioritize Braylon Allen first in that scenario. Lethal Jake sends in a question, says, is Jennings a start moving forward? Until, of course, Deebo Samuel and, of course, George Kittle come back. Once those two return, the value of Jennings is then eliminated in my mind. Started him with A.J. Brown out, especially with Deebo and Kittle out, question mark. Jennings, Goddard, Packers got me 100 points this week. Congratulations on being 3-0, Lethal Jake. Yeah, that is I mean, again, you weren't supposed to get 100 points out of those 3 potential players, but you did, and we'll take it anytime we can. JC Too Much says, forgot to mention, I have Bijan, Robinson, Derrick Henry, Ty Chandler, Jalen Wright, and McLaughlin. Jay, let me go ahead and scroll it back up just so I can get a context as to what you're referencing to real quick. Trade AJ Brown, Steven. Okay, so those are the running backs you have. So giving away Stevenson may not hurt as much as basically what you're trying to convey here, considering the running back depth that you have. So here's the thing. My only concern, Jay, would be that if you make this trade, okay, if anything was to happen to Bijan or Derrick Henry, you don't have Ty Chandler. Sorry, you don't have Ty Chandler. You have Ty Chandler. You don't have Tyler Algier, nor do you don't have Justice Hill. So you don't have any handcuff options. My only concern would be that when bye weeks arrive, having to trust Ty Chandler, Jalen Wright, or McLaughlin on a given week is far too risky in my opinion. I'd legitimately just rather have Ramondre as the pivoting option available. And especially if an injury was to take place, that is unfortunate, you'd also still not be screwed out of a potential top 24 running back, which he should be able to sustain as. If Devin Singletary can find value in a given week, so will Ramondre Stevenson. Just hold on for hope. Do not think that week 3 is something that is going to repeat going forward. Andrews or Kmet? Again, Cole Kmet is someone that very, very easily could be of great value, especially if we continue to see Keenan Allen miss time. Considering Keenan Allen's injury is a foot injury that is probably something of the nature. Let me actually see. Did they mention what? I think it's what's it called? When the arch of your foot like collapses. I forget the name of that thing. I know Herbert was dealing with it this offseason. And either way, if Keenan Allen has a legitimate injury that's going to continue to hold him out, he hasn't been put on the IR, so it's not as serious, but there's always a possibility of re-injury. So again, pick up Kmet. Maybe we start him over Andrews this week. I don't have an issue with that. Just got here. Thoughts on AR? Pick up another quarterback because we're probably going to need to use one going forward. I have Kyron. Is Corum droppable? Maybe for Roshan. If you need the running back depth and you need someone to start as an RB2, RB3 flex, I don't mind it. But here's the thing. Understand that if you do drop Corum, you have pretty much forfeited any sort of insurance policy. As long as you are plantar fasciitis, thank you. If you're in a situation where you are desperate enough to where you cannot insure your insurance policy on roster for your best running back, then I think if you are desperate enough, then it needs to be done and the swap needs to be made. Thank you. Okay, that covers that. Let's see here. Lelexel says, chat, should I trade Evans for Najee Harris and Reed? I think it's dependent on what you need at running back. If the desperation of running back is that necessary, then perhaps it could be a move, but I don't know if I would do that. Bucky or Madison rest of the season, I'd rather have Bucky. I just do not want to, honestly, quite frankly, outside of Devontae Adams and Bowers, I do not want to touch anybody on the Raiders. It just seems like a cesspool of disaster that is waiting to happen. Would you do Garrett Wilson for Ramondre Stevenson and Rachaad White? I don't really think I want to trade for Rachaad White right now based on the way that offense is functioning and the acceleration of Bucky Irvin's usage as of late. So, I mean, if you need running back depth and you got nobody else, you lost Pacheco, for example, then sure, maybe we can make that move. But outside of that kind of a scenario, it's tough. Matt Ponce says, Jamar finally had a game. I want to trade him and Mahomes for Josh Allen and then trade... Wait, what? I want to trade him and Mahomes for Josh Allen and then trade Jordan Mason for James Cook. Thoughts? I think giving away Jamar Chase for Josh Allen is a brutal mistake. Brutal. But it is your league. Do what you will. Sam Darnold or Jordan Love this week? If Jordan Love is healthy... Against Minnesota, it scares the shit out of me. That defense is brutal. That being said, I probably would start him. Let's see here. My RB2 is Jerome Ford. Understood. Probably, yeah. Then at that point, we might need to. Sean Gray says, should I trade Deontay Johnson for Charbonnet? I have Walker and my wide receiver depth is solid. Yeah, that's fine. Getting your insurance piece is not an issue there. Especially if, in fact, Kenneth Walker returns and then he re-aggravates the injury. I don't mind that move. Let's see here. I have Carr and Richardson. Who should I start moving forward? As of going into this week against Atlanta and in Indianapolis taking on Pittsburgh, you're probably in a situation where you're starting Carr, unfortunately, which sucks, but it is what it is. Bucky or Steele? Depends. If Kareem Hunt is activated, at that point, we'll probably play Bucky. But if you're talking about waiver wire pickup, it's Bucky. You think Fields is worth the backup QB, I have Goff and Minshew. Are you in a 3 QB league? If so, then yes, because Fields is better than Minshew. Let's see here. Andrew Clark says, how we feeling about Keon Coleman last season? Not great. Again, Shakir is the number one. Then subsequently after, it's like James Cook, Kincaid, etc. So unless he's open, 30 yards down the field, doesn't seem like he's... Again, 1 target in 2 weeks is brutal. So again, he's a lottery ticket. He'd only have value if, he begins to build momentum at practice or something of that nature. Maybe an injury to another player on that offense. Jared says, trade away Andrews and Ridley for Njoku and Godwin. Yes, that's fine by me. I don't have an issue with that at all. Sounds good to me. Would you trade A.J. Brown for Cooper Kupp? No, I'd rather have A.J. Brown rest of the season. CeeDee Lamb and Mason for Stevenson and Neighbors or Olave. I'd rather have the CeeDee Lamb. Well, depends. If you don't have Christian McCaffrey and you're giving away Mason in this scenario, I don't know if I like the return there, because I think Lamb is just so damn valuable that giving him away, you like, instead of trading away CeeDee Lamb and Mason for Neighbors, or Stevenson, I'd want Neighbors and Olave. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have Stevenson in that scenario, Abdullah. But obviously depends on what they're offering you. Samuel Walker says, yo, I don't know if you saw, but my running back depth is Jacobs, Kamara, Mason. Is that enough to do Ayuk for Moss trade? Jacobs? Yeah, absolutely. It's enough. It's more than enough. Yeah, you're going to go in that scenario. Is Cole Kmet worth a waiver if I have Njoku and Kincaid? No, you don't need you have Kincaid. You have Kincaid. You're good. You're fine. Medina 2197 says, in a full PPR, I have Pitts and Andrews. Should I drop one of them for Gesicki? No, keep them both. You don't want Gesicki or Strange. Strange is only valuable until Evan Ingram returns. Gesicki, I think, will eventually, in time, be phased out of the offense because, again, they're gonna use a lot of 11 personnel, but Gesicki doesn't play every snap. Like, there's a lot of tight ends in the rotation there. Yes, he does get a lot of targets for the few routes that he does run, but ultimately, yes, I would prefer to keep Pitts and Andrews on your team. Is Keon Coleman droppable? Depends. If somebody of like higher value is on the waivers, that is going to be a consistent option. For example, let's say, for just throwing it out there, if Darnell Mooney was available and I had Keon Coleman on my bench, I'd rather just have Darnell Mooney, especially with bye weeks coming up and injuries continuing to take place. I want someone that I can play and immediately find success. Now, if you're in a situation where you're like, hey, I have a one spot in my bench that really it's just for anybody that's a lottery ticket, then yeah, you can continue to hold them, but it just depends. Is Kelsey droppable for whoever since I have Bowers? No, you would never drop Kelsey. You would only trade him. By drafting Kelsey, you have made a non-verbal communicative, you've made a bond to the player that unless you're going to be in a situation where you trade him, you are not allowed to drop them. That's the kind of bond you made by selecting pick player or draft player on your draft day. So you've made a non-verbal commitment to him or to eventually trade him. In sickness or in health, you made a commitment to that player. But yes, if you can trade him, do not drop him. Let's see here. Any Jonathan Brooks expectations? I mean, depends, right? I do anticipate that he probably won't be at a full speed once he comes back from his injury. I think we're going to need a couple weeks of ramping up. So Chuba Hubbard is probably going to have value up until like week 7, maybe. And then from there, hopefully he'll be able to take over the backfield. I mean, you never know. His progress could have been far better than what we anticipate. He could be far ahead of schedule in terms of his ACL recovery to where he returns and he's immediately the RB1. We mentioned it last week once Bryce Young did get benched, that it is a clear known fact based on what we have seen that the usage of the players on this offense is going to be dependent on the association with the new head coach. Dave Canales wants to play his players. He does not want to play the players that were here before him. Therefore, we have the benching of Bryce Young. Therefore, we will probably see Jonathan Brooks take favor over Chuba Hubbard going forward, and we will see Xavier Legette, Deontay Johnson be the number 1 and 2 eventually. Huntley is going to start for the Dolphins, ? I hope so. We'll have to wait and see. Again, he just arrived there, so learning that whole offense could be very difficult. So we'll have to wait and see. Any comments on Chase Brown, Zach Moss splits? I don't even know what the splits were. Obviously, I watched the game, but I don't know what the actual statistical split was in terms of snaps, in terms of total usage in that regard, in terms of routes ran, in terms of all that kind of jazz. Once I get that full designation, I'll have more of an opinion probably by tomorrow, top 40 running back rankings. But Zach Moss obviously finding the end zone was great at the end of that game, very much so saved us, but also got himself a lot of receiving utilization, which we love to see for fantasy value. All right, Bucky or Madison rest season, Rexton. We'll take Bucky there. Drop Watson for Mooney. Yeah, sure. I don't have an issue with that. But again, with Jordan Love coming back, Watson does have elevated value because, again, they can now move the ball down the field, which typically they haven't been able to do thus far, even though, Watson made a huge catch the other day. Okay, so we've been here for about an hour 20. That's typically where I want to kind of keep it in terms of live streams every night. I do appreciate y'all coming through. That's where I'm going to call it. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with my top 40 running back rankings. Additionally, tomorrow night I'll be live streaming. So if you have any questions, be sure to swing on by. But if you want to make sure that you get your questions answered 100% of the time, unlimited questions, you could check out the Patreon. There's a link down in the description. That's one of the potential benefits there. Mr. Singh just sent in a super chat. We'll go ahead and answer that question, and that'll be it. But yeah, Patreon, if you guys want unlimited questions answered, well, never mind. Mr. Singh redacted the question. That is done. Anyway, if you guys want 100% of your questions answered, you can check that out. Thank you very much again for all the support, guys. I will be back tomorrow. Outside of that, if you haven't checked out the waiver wire video in terms of my thoughts on players that you could potentially acquire, be sure to do so. Appreciate it. And until next time, I'm going to go ahead and cue the music. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Okay, hold up. Everybody wait a second. Wait a second. Pausing the music. Jay Stroh sent in a super chat. Dre, I see you in the chat. Says, Warren droppable for Roschon, Wilson, or Patterson? Okay, so Roschon Johnson, I know who you're talking about. When you say Wilson, I'm assuming it's Emmanuel Wilson. And then once you say Patterson, I'm assuming you mean Cordero. Under the assumption that that is all true, Roschon Johnson would be the preferred of the bunch because, again, he could theoretically take the starting job away from DeAndre Swift, who has played like a bum. 1.8 yards per carry. Ridiculous. I can't believe I fucking drafted that guy. Anyway, so, theoretically speaking, Roschon Johnson would be the preferred, Jay. I am here, Jay. Hopefully you didn't leave. Are you here, Jay? Type in the chat, brother. Anyway, thank you, and have a good night, guys.